Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to have you here with us at Sundance, London. Maybe you could just kickstart the interview with an introduction. Tell us a bit about the film Invisible Beauty and what people can expect when they watch it.
So, Invisible Beauty is a film that we co-directed together. Bethann is the subject. It's her story, and it's a story of a woman who really changed how fashion looks, and um, beyond fashion, actually, culture looks in the U.S. in terms of racial diversity. And so we tell that story, and we also tell the story of Bethann from childhood to now, and like how active she has been all through her life, impacting a lot of other people.
And tell us a bit about the genesis of the project. You know, whose idea was it first to make the documentary, and how did your collaboration come about?
Well, we met a few years ago. Bethann was getting honored at the CFDA, which is the big fashion awards in New York, and they needed a 3-minute film. And I was approached. I had just come out with my first film, Dior and I, and so we met like that. And very quickly, within 2 weeks, I was interviewing Bethann for this 3-minute piece, and the interview went on and on and on. There was just so much to talk about, and I really thought this was a special person, a special story. And Bethann had already started working on a documentary, and so we started talking about that then. And now here we are.
How do you decide, where to begin, what to include, how to encapsulate this all in, the space of one film?
We talked a lot. I mean, that's what the film is about. We co-directed, and I was looking for a conversation. So I proposed to Bethann. I was like, "Will you be my co-director? Will you do this with me?" And she said yes. And then we got on the phone and we discussed, like who should compose the music, how should we start the film, and all these conversations, ended up like informing how the film played. And actually, a lot of the phone conversations end up in the film, and it's a story of like conversing and kind of collaborating. I feel like I wanted to do that, and Bethann was game to do that, and it was for me it was a deepening of the relationship, which was really made me grow.
And I guess that's actually quite unique because in documentary making, sometimes it's either the subject sort of, in charge of the narrative, or it's the director kind of looking in, with maybe a more objective kind of perspective. But the fact that it's you two working together, what do you think was unique about that? And how do you think that changes the perspective of the film?
I think what's unique about it is the fact that we actually did that. Exactly what you said. That it really was an unusual situation where you have a documentary about a subject. The subject also becomes the co-director, and they co-direct the film together. That's very unusual in general. And the fact that I'm unusual anyway, and he's not so usual, the combination worked. I think it really takes an outside vision, and also the fact that Frederick is not a fashion person. He's basically somebody who really is curious about story, and the story was attractive, but he didn't want to be responsible for it alone. I'm alive and well. If I'm gonna do this, I want you to be responsible with me to tell the story, because he wants to get it right, and he also needs the impact of the person who wants to be involved, feels the commitment, well, to be also that person in charge, also responsible for it, to tell the story. And that's where I think it became very unique in itself.
And tell us about the process of making it. What were some of the
I
highlights
hated him
along the
every
way?
second of the way.
No. She's very smooth and respectful. Bethann really was kind of cool in letting me do what I do, what I'm good at, and kind of knowing when to step in and redirect and say, like, maybe we need a little more of this, or maybe this person should be in the film. For me, it was very cool because I really felt like I had a lot to learn from this person. This is a person who's mentored a lot of people in the fashion world, and I feel like I wanted to be mentored in that way, and that's why I think the collaboration kind of worked because I was the audience. Bethan kept telling me like, you are the audience, and I was there to listen. I was curious about the story.
Do you have a favorite moment, even in the making of it, or when you watch it back now?
Well, my favorite moment was all these phone conversations we had. We were like, Bethan loves to talk on the phone, and I love to listen. And she would always drop these kind of like gems of like one-liners, And then I was like, I gotta record these conversations because they're too rich. You're telling me things, that I want to capture for the film. And so, yeah, that was a very special place for me to have, every other day or once a week, we would talk on the phone for a really long time, and that would inform my process.
And in terms of what people can take away from watching the film, I mean, I guess on the one hand, learning about Bethann and this kind of revolutionary role that he played, but also maybe for people understanding, the fashion world and what it means to have to kind of, face these barriers or jump over these hurdles, and to actually make something change, which is something that's a very difficult industry to change.
Well, as you see, it wasn't so difficult to change. It wasn't so, it's not difficult to change. I mean, what's difficult is sometimes how we allow things to become, because it was already something before it became that. And because I had lived long enough and had experienced the times when I was someone who grew up in the industry, I grew up in a garment district, and you basically can come in and you get opportunity to become a model, or you become an assistant to designers, and that's what I did mostly. So when Versailles happened, that was unique in itself. But what had begun to happen in our industry in the early mid 90s, it was such a change that it was something that you knew needed to be spoken to. And that was what was really, I think, important for me, is because I couldn't let my industry become representative of something that was not appealing. And if anybody's going to set the tone of how we see things, we are visible people. So we actually put models in magazines. We put models on runway. Designers get an opportunity to do something. If you look at Mr. Saint Laurent, you always think about the brilliance of his visionaire. And I just basically knew that I can't let this industry do this. So you just basically have a conversation about it. You start going around talking. And then they start waking up because they start seeing that they've gone down a rabbit hole. That's the important stuff they've done. I'm very happy that these things that I do or have done, people sort of listen, because I do it in such a way that makes them not feel like I'm attacking them. But I am attacking them.
And finally, what is the importance of representation, whether that's in the fashion world, whether that's in film, whether
No
that's
matter
in
where it
anything?
is. That's exactly. This is very important that you just said that, because this is not about fashion. I use that as a tool to sort of like change things. This is about really just being better about what you do, because we don't need to not, we all stuck in the same who we are, and don't get outside our little comfort zone and go meet the other guy. Like, I need to know who this little girl is right now that's listening to those little things in her ear. She's more important to me than me sitting here talking to him, because I know him already. The important things is just getting out of our comfort zone and mixing it up. Getting to know you just because you're blonde and have those wonderful color eyes don't mean that I shouldn't know who you are. So they're valuable. It's valuable lessons in the film in that way, because it does allow you to sort of believe that, wow, I could be inspired to do a little bit more. Not necessarily do you have to, but just inspiration to me is sufficient.
And does it surprise you that even in this day and age, sometimes it feels like we're going to be going backwards?
Oh
And
my
still
gosh.
having these same old arguments about representation, why it's important. The thing about universities, about positive affirmation, these debates are still ongoing. But it's a fight that we have to keep having every generation.
Yeah, but that's the good news about it. Yeah, you have to understand too that politically everything's changing, and that's affecting little, to me, environments. As big as the fashion industry is, it's still small, and so it is very important to be very careful. That's why we all have to really take charge ourselves as people, to really stimulate and decide that this is how it's going to be, because this is where we are. If we can do nothing more than just do it amongst ourselves, that's where the changes have come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think, one of the reasons we made this movie is to show the history, because people need to know where we come from. That's why it's so important to have people like Bethann who have lived through a lot and have seen different changes, different periods of our society, and sometimes it goes backwards, sometimes it goes forward. So shining a light on the history is already a first step, in understanding how to avoid falling back again.
Fantastic. Well, I'm out of time, but thank you so much for sharing all that with us.
Thank
And
you
really
so
enjoyed
much.
presenting your
You
film
too.
here at
You
Sundance
too.
London.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely
Thank
to
you.
chat to you. Thanks a lot.